Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to install the DECKED system on this 2016 Toyota Tacoma. Let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is take some painter's tape and we're going to mark the center of our bed, and this is going to help us align everything as we go through our install. So on this truck it's actually pretty easy. I have two threaded holes here. It's actually right in the center of those holes is the center of my truck. If you don't have those holes, you're just going to measure the bulkhead and then cut it in half, and that's going to be your center. But I'm just going to use some tape and mark that about halfway down. So the next thing that we would do would be to install our shims to fill some of the gaps in our bed where our DECKED system is going to go. But since we have a bed rug in here, we actually don't need to. This bed rug fills those gaps for us, but I'm going to go ahead and walk you guys through this anyway. Your fat shim with the hole is going to go to your cab side, and that's going to go to your body mount. So your bolt is going to go right where the hole is, and then you would release the tape, use some alcohol to clean that surface, and you would stick it into place right there. You do the same thing on the opposite side as well. Now your skinny shim would go to the channel that's right to the driver's side of your center line that we did, and that's going to be 3 inches away from the cab, and then you're also going to have another one that's going to go along that same channel, but that's going to be towards the tailgate, and it's going to be 6.5 inches from your tailgate. And the same thing, you're going to flip it over, release the tape, use the alcohol to clean the surface, and then stick it in place. Now we're at the rear of the truck on the passenger side, and we're going to take our door off of our storage compartment. We're actually not going to put that back on because with the DECKED system in, you're not going to be able to open it. And then we're going to take out the rearmost top Torx head bolt. It's going to be a T30. We're going to take that bolt out. And our kit is going to come with 2 tie-down brackets. And we're going to fit that up there with our tie-down hook part facing towards the inside of the truck. We're going to replace that bolt. And we're just going to snug this bolt up for right now. So now we want to make sure that our line, the back of our bracket is flush with the back of our compartment. And then we're going to mark this hole with a silver Sharpie, and then we're going to drill it out to 1/4 inch. Now when you're drilling this, you're going to want to make sure that you have a drill stop. Set it to about 1/2 inch, and that's so that when you drill through this and through the side of the truck, you don't accidentally go into like the light or anything like that that's in the back. So now we're going to take our bracket, we're going to reinstall our Torx bolt. Just leave that a little bit loose for right now. And then we're going to take a provided 1-inch bolt and put that through the hole that we drilled. And then we're going to have to reach under the truck from the inside, and then we're going to put a washer and a locking nut on the back of that bolt. So now with a buddy underneath the truck holding this nut in place, we can go ahead and use a 10mm and tighten this down. And then we can also tighten down our T30 bolt up top. Then you're going to repeat the same steps on the opposite side, only the silver bolt is not going to have a washer on your driver's side. So now we have our vertical vert, and we're on the side with the 4 holes, and it's actually got a hook at the top. And then we have our cab side vert, which has got the 4 nut certs on the inside. And we're going to match those 2 pieces up, making sure to hook it into place like that. and then we're going to run our bolts through the center vert into our cab side vert. So now we have our two verts flipped upside down because that's actually going to allow us to install our bolts easier. And they're just going to go from the vertical vert into the cab side vert. We want to get all four of those started. And then once we have them all in, we can go ahead and tighten them down. And when you tighten these down, you want to make sure that you don't go too tight. Remember, these are just nut certs. You don't want to rip those out. And on this piece, we also want to alternate where we're tightening. So I tightened the bottom corner on that one. So now I'm going to tighten the top corner on the other side. Then I'm going to move to the bottom bolt on the same side. And then the top bolt on this side. And once we have those tightened down, we can go ahead and flip our assembly right side up. Now we have our passenger side stud, and we're going to loosely install that. Our threaded inserts are going to match up with our holes on our cab side vert. Now this is only going to fit one way, and then we're going to run our factory hardware through our cab side vert into our threaded inserts on our stud. We're just going to leave this loose for right now, and then we're going to repeat this on the opposite side as well. Okay, so next what you're going to want to do is put your panels into position over your center vert and your cab vert. Your skinny panel is going to go on your driver's side, your larger panel is going to go on your passenger side. And then you're going to want to line up the 4 holes in the top of your panel with your stud on each side. Now we're going to loosely install our bolts through the top panel and into our stud. And what this is going to do is help us align our stud so that we can tighten down the 3 bolts going from our cab side vert to our stud. You're going to want to do that on both sides. So now that we have everything loosely installed, we can tighten down the 6 bolts that are going from our cab vert to our studs. And we're going to use a 10mm to tighten those down. Again, make sure you don't go too tight. These are just going into nut certs. You don't want to strip them. Now with our studs tightened down to our cab vert, we can go ahead and remove the bolts holding on our panels, and then remove the panels and just set those aside for later. We're going to do that on both panels. Next, we're going to mount our stud bracket to the back rear part of our stud. We're going to use our 3.5-inch bolts. We're going to go through the inside of our stud through our bracket with a nut on the back. We're going to do that on 3 locations. The top 2 and this bottom one in the rear. And then we can go ahead and tighten these down. Now we're going to install our cab side bracket to our stud bracket. We're going to go through the top hole on our stud bracket. We're going to use a 3/4 inch bolt with a nut on the end. And then we're just going to leave this loose for right now. So now we're going to lift our assembly into the truck and push it all the way up against the cab. And our center vert is going to have a notch that marks the center of the assembly, and we want to make sure that matches up with our center mark that we made earlier. Next, we're going to take our cab side bracket, and we're going to push that all the way up against our wheel well, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten down our bolt. And then go ahead and repeat that on the opposite side. Next, we're going to drill 3 holes where our cab side bracket is. We're going to drill this top hole, the center hole in the middle, and then the bottom hole to the back. And we're going to drill those out to 1/4 inch. So once we get that drilled out, I'm going to go ahead and put a bolt through there. And that's just going to keep everything lined up to make sure that it doesn't move on me when I drill my other 2 holes. Now on the back, you're going to get a backing plate and also 3 nuts to go on those bolts. So now we can see where our 3 bolts came through. I'm going to put my backing plate on. And then we're going to put a nut on each one of those. And then we're going to leave that loose for right now. And we're going to go ahead and repeat that on the opposite side. Alright guys, now that we have both sides in, we got a friend in the wheel well holding the nut. We're going to go ahead and tighten these bolts down. And we can go ahead and repeat that on the opposite side. So next we're going to slide our ammo can in front of our compartment. So if you want the door on, you're going to want to put that on now. If you want it off, make sure you take it off. But we're going to put it right in there, and you're going to want to make sure that you have this threaded portion facing towards the tailgate. You're going to put both of those in right now. So now we're going to install our C channel on our passenger side. Now the closed end is going to go towards the cab, and we also want a round hole to the top closest to the cab, and also a round hole to the bottom, and that's going to match up with our stud on the passenger side. So we're going to push that all the way down to the end, like that. It should fall into place. So on our ammo can side, there's also going to be a lower hole and an upper hole, and that's going to get a bolt running from the channel through the ammo can, and it's going to get a nut on the back. Same thing with our other location, bolt through with a nut on the back. So now at the stud, there's also going to be 2 bolts, but those are going to go into threaded inserts. Go ahead and get those started. And then we're going to leave the hardware loose at the ammo can, but we're going to tighten down the hardware at the stud. And again, just make sure that you don't tighten them down too much because they are going into nut certs and we don't want to strip those out. And we're going to do that on both sides. Next thing we're going to do is assemble our panels. Just going to set those on the top. Push them into place. So now that we have our panel in place, we can loosely install our bolts. It's going to be 5 down the center. Next, you're going to have 4 bolts that go through the panel to the stud. Now these 4 bolts that we're going to put into the stud are going to require O-rings. And then we're going to have 8 bolts that go through the panel to the ammo can. Now these 8 bolts that are going to go into the ammo can are also going to require O-rings. Now the ammo can, you might have to move it around a little bit because that's not tight down yet. But you should be able to move it around and align all those bolts in there. And there should be 8 altogether. So now we can go back through and tighten everything down. Again, just make sure that you don't over tighten anything. These bolts are all going into nut certs. And you're going to repeat that on the opposite side. Next, we're going to tighten down the 2 bolts that are going from our C channel to our ammo can. And we're going to use an impact for this, but you don't want to go too tight, you just want to snug this bolt up. And repeat that on the opposite side. Next, we're going to install our J-hooks, and that's going to go right through the tie down that we installed earlier. So now we're going to come up through our ammo can, and then we're going to put our plastic spacer on top of that. It should fit right into the groove that's in the ammo can. On top of that is going to go a washer, and then our nut. And then we can go ahead and snug this down. And then go ahead and repeat that on the other side. So next we're going to take our drawers and we're going to put our corner brackets on. There's going to be a threaded tube that's going to go through the hole in the corner. And then you're going to have 4 holes that should line up if you have the correct corner piece. Now in the top hole, on the back side, we're going to take a 2-inch bolt and we're going to go through the back to the front, and we're going to put a nut on there. And then through our 2 bottom holes, we're going to take a 3/4 inch bolt, and again we're going to go through the back to the front with a nut. On both of those. So now we can go ahead and tighten this bracket down. And then we can do the same exact thing on the other corner. Now our drawers are also going to have a side brace, and that's going to go in this last hole right here. Obviously you're going to use the longer one for the bigger drawer, and we're just going to use a 3/4 inch bolt, go through the side, and it's going to thread right into this pipe. And we're going to drop this down to the other hole and put another bolt through the other side. So now we're going to use an 11mm to hold our brace in place, and then we'll tighten up the bolt with a 10mm. We're going to do that on both sides. So the threaded tube that we push through to the outside is actually going to hold our wheel in place. We're going to use a button head bolt, go through our wheel and into those threads. And we can just twist that on, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten this down. We're going to use this 7/32 Allen head. We're just going to tighten that up. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side of this drawer, and then we're going to go ahead and repeat all those steps on our small drawer. So now we're just going to line up our wheels with our channels and slide it to the back. We're going to do that on both drawers. So now we're going to install our wheels on the front, and on your ammo can you're going to have a little threaded tube. We're going to thread our button head bolt through there with a wheel on it. You might have to have somebody hold up the drawer for you because it's going to be a little bit tight. So in the center, on your center vert, you're going to have another spot right at the front where a wheel can go. And again, we're just going to thread our button head bolt in there. And once we get those threaded in, we can go ahead and tighten them down with a 7/32 Allen head. We're going to go ahead and repeat that on the other side. Next, we're going to install our seal, and the blade portion is going to face towards the inside of the truck. It's just going to fit right over the top of the lip on the drawer. The larger one obviously is going to go on our larger drawer. And then we're just going to push that until it's all the way down. We're going to do that on both drawers. Next, we're going to install our torsion bar. That's going to line up to the 2 nutserts in our ammo cans and the 2 that is in our center vert. And it's going to fit right underneath of all of that. If you've got a bed rug or some kind of bed mat, it might be a little bit tight, but it should fit. And then on the 2 outside holes, we're going to use our 1-inch bolts. Now on our center one, we're also going to use 1-inch bolts, but we're also going to put in our bottle opener plate. So it's going to be 2 1-inch bolts at the bottom. Then your kit's going to also come with 2 smaller bolts to go through the top. And then we can tighten all of those down. So we can use our 10mm and we can go ahead and tighten all of these bolts down. So now we're going to stick our ruler on the front of the deck system. There's going to be a cutout area for it. We're going to slide it all the way to the front. We're going to make sure that it's centered within that area. And then we're going to use 3 1/2-inch screws to drill into the 3 bottom holes in the ruler. Now in our 3 cab side holes, we're going to drill a 9/64-inch hole. We're going to put a 1/2-inch drill stop on that as well, because we want to make sure that we don't go too far. Now we're going to take a 3/4-inch screw and place it on each of those holes that we drilled. Now we can install the caps to our ammo cans. They're going to be labeled L for driver and R for passenger. You're just going to set those in just like that. Now if you got locks for your drawers, you're going to want to install those now, or if you have the plugs, you can simply just push them into place. Alright guys, that completes the installation. If you have any questions, give us a call or visit us online. Thanks.